Hi, I'm Allison Fujito, violinist with the Pittsburgh Symphony, and this is Violin Rehab, where I'm discussing various aspects of the road to recovery following rotator cuff surgery, and hopefully a lot of the strategies I'm using to regain strength, range of motion, flexibility, and technical skills can be helpful to you, even if you've not actually had an injury. A few of you have messaged me to ask me to talk more about violin viola injuries and physical therapy, and I think that's a great idea. And I just have to tell you the usual disclaimers. I am not a doctor. I do not play one on TV. I'm not a physical therapist or any kind of medical professional. I am a violinist. So I'm talking about things that have helped me, or sometimes not helped, in my own experience. And even if you have a rotator cuff injury like mine, that doesn't mean your experience will be the same as mine. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. I think one of the most important things to start with is if you have an injury, whether it's a sudden injury or if it's something that's been chronically painful for quite a while, it's really important that you get a definitive diagnosis. Preferably, in my opinion, from an orthopedist, a physiatrist, or a sports medicine doctor, as they have access to diagnostic tools like x-rays and MRIs. Now, I am a big fan of alternative medicine as well, and I've had excellent results from chiropractic care and acupuncture, and I have friends who swear by Chinese medicine. As I understand it, they cannot refer you for an MRI. Also, I would not have recovered this far without two fabulous physical therapists. So here's my shout out to David Campagna and Josh Hubert. Thanks, guys. And physical therapists are terrific. As I understand it, and this seems a little odd to me, they're not actually permitted to diagnose a problem. They're permitted to treat it, and that really seems a little weird to me, but that's how the system is set up. Now, getting a diagnosis can take a while, and especially these days. Getting an appointment to see an orthopedist, they might be booked up for months. The one that I wanted to see was booked up for 4 months, and I was able to get an appointment with someone else in the same practice who turned out to be fabulous. And initially, though, she had written a script for an MRI for me, and then I was told that the earliest appointment for an MRI at a facility covered by my insurance, that's the key these days, would be in 2 months. And for something like a torn tendon, this is really troublesome because scar tissue forms during that time and you get muscle atrophy. And without a diagnosis, you can't do physical therapy without risking making a tear worse. Or if you've broken a bone, that could also be a huge problem. So I spent literally 6 hours on the phone with the insurance company, being transferred to all kinds of different representatives, until somebody there finally took pity on me and authorized an appointment at another facility I can say that word, facility, that was not usually covered by that insurance company. And they authorized an appointment for the following week. So I had the MRI, and then we found out we're dealing with a bad tear in the supraspinatus tendon, which is up here. And, well, actually, no tear is actually good. Apparently, it was what they call a full thickness tear, which is worse. Small tears can heal on their own, and really, that's kind of amazing when you think about it. But unfortunately, a tendon that has torn all the way through and like off the bone does not reattach itself. And where the tear is in the tendon, whether it's large or small, makes a difference in how it heals or how it's repaired, whether it's very close to the bone or whether it's in the middle between the bone and the muscle, and so on. And some people, even with large tears, choose not to have surgery, and their injuries do eventually heal, and the pain eventually goes away, and the tendon doesn't actually reattach itself. So they have to learn how to use other muscles to move their arm. And that's doable, but it's very awkward. You end up, instead of lifting your arm this way, you end up lifting it this way. And for what we violinists have to do, that's not a good thing. So that's why most of us always end up getting a large tear surgically repaired. So ultimately, it's your decision how you want your injury to either heal or to be repaired. It's up to you, so learn as much as you can about it so you can make the most informed decision possible. In my case, I had the diagnosis and surgery really seemed like a no-brainer. I need to lift this arm without using my back and neck muscles to do so. Getting scheduled for surgery was another challenge. The surgeon I was able to make the initial appointment with was booked solid for 2 months. And remember what I said about scar tissue? So what I did was to go to physical therapy before the surgery for what they call prehab. Prehab aims to prevent scar tissue and muscle atrophy and to maintain as much flexibility and strength as possible. And this made an enormous difference in how quickly I was able to get back basic movement after the surgery. So if you either have to have surgery or choose to have surgery, please ask your surgeon about prehab. And depending on your insurance, you might not even have to get a referral from the surgeon. You might be able to self-refer directly with a physical therapist. Working with a physical therapist is a lot like working with a violin teacher in so many ways. So you know how a violin teacher might be a terrific violinist and might even be a really good teacher, but just doesn't connect well with maybe some students, maybe one student doesn't read them well. You can have exactly the same thing with a physical therapist. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad physical therapist. It means it's not a good fit. And that can happen with any kind of caregiver, right? And I think in any profession, in addition to that, you have a wide range of quality. So trust your instincts. If for any reason you're not comfortable, consider switching to someone else. And I think a good place to start when you're looking for a physical therapist is to ask your orthopedist which physical therapists in their experience have patients with the best results with your specific injury. And conversely, you can do the same thing. You can ask your physical therapist or your chiropractor or whoever you go to for healthcare issues, which surgeons in their experience have the best outcomes for your specific injury. If you have a shoulder injury, it might not be so helpful to know which surgeons have the best rate of knee surgery recovery. But either way, it works both ways. Either ask the physical therapist who the best surgeons are, or ask the surgeons who the best physical therapists are for your specific condition. Now, one injury that is way too common for violinists and violists is tendinitis. That's primarily considered an injury of overuse, but that doesn't mean that practicing 4 to 5 hours a day necessarily causes tendinitis. Really, it's a combination of overuse and wrong use. And by wrong, I mean that there's unnecessary physical tension involved, either in how you're holding the instrument or in how you're using your hand or fingers. So for example, if you go back to the Violin Rehab episode 1 video, remember we were talking about Sevchik finger doodles, and I said keep your left hand loose and your fingers light, not squeezing with your hand, not pounding your fingers down, and not popping them up unnecessarily, because all of that would cause tension and strain your tendons. And we haven't yet talked here about double stops, but that's the same thing too. If you press hard while trying to practice them and you never release, you can actually strain 4 tendons at once. So that's something we'll cover later on when we talk about double stops, but be aware that tightness and tension can be your enemy. If you hold the instrument by clamping between shoulder and neck, and let me demonstrate. Yes, we put the violin on the shoulder and we put the chin in the chin rest, but if you push your shoulder up and clamp it between your neck, that's going to strain things very quickly, and not just in your shoulder and neck. It also has tension repercussions all the way down to your fingers, because we have nerves that travel from our necks to our fingers. In fact, one of the complications from my own surgery on my shoulder was some mild to moderate nerve damage And it's weird because the surgery was up here. All the cutting and repairing involved was done up here. But the nerve damage is from my elbow to my wrist, which sounds crazy, but apparently it's not uncommon. And so what I end up feeling is numbness and tingling. And so it's a really, really weird combination. So when I do this, can you see? When I do this, I can't really feel it. But at the same time, there's this constant, almost painful tingling sensation just under my skin, even though I can't feel this. So it's very strange. I'm really lucky because it has been gradually improving and at an almost constant rate, which is good, ever since the surgery. And I'm told that it should continue to improve for a year or more. I do find that when I push myself too hard, either when I'm doing physical therapy or when I'm trying to get my arm to play, up high on the G string, the nerve pain gets worse. And the good news is nerves regenerate, so I just have to be patient. It's getting better. So we were talking about clamping between neck and shoulder. And I should also mention that the position, the range of where you can hold your violin from left to right, there's a balance. If you hold too much towards one way, it's going to strain the other side. So for example, if I hold way out to my left here, that makes it easier on my arm, on my left arm, but it makes it harder on my right arm because look what happens when I try to draw a straight bow. I end up with, you can't really see because my arm's off the camera, my right arm is straight and I still have 4 or 5 inches of bow left that I can't use. So that's not a good idea. But if it's too far in like this, that causes a lot of strain either around the shoulder area here or here. And I also might try to compensate by twisting this way, and that's not good either. Luckily, there are a number of excellent violinists and violists who are delving deep into this subject of physical balance on violin and viola, and how lack of balance can make so many things go very wrong. I'm going to put a whole bunch of links in the description below this video so you can click on them and explore. There's a violinist named, and I hope I pronounce her name correctly, Jennifer Roig-Francoli, and she offers a lot of online classes, videos, a Facebook group, all on Alexander technique and how it relates to violin playing. There's another violinist named Jennifer Johnson who teaches something called body mapping, and that seems to overlap a lot with Alexander technique, and she's also had a lot of success. And I found a musician who's a physical therapist in Vancouver with a very interesting page on physical therapy and violin playing, and so you should check that out. Her name is Grace, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, Cheung, Cheung, at Go Physical Therapy. That's in Vancouver. But they've got a website with all kinds of interesting information, so you can live anywhere and check that out. And I'm also going to put in a link for an excellent discussion and demonstration of warm-up stretches by another friend of mine, Lynn Kuo, who is the assistant concertmaster of the National Ballet Orchestra of Canada. She makes a very clear distinction between the warm-up stretches that she's talking about for before you practice and the kinds of stretches that we should do after practicing. Now, she hasn't yet posted her video on the after practice stretches, but you can watch the one on the before practice warm-ups, she calls them. Once she posts the after practice stretches, I'll add another link for that in the description. And one of the very best approaches I've seen is in a workshop by a friend of mine named Travis Merrill, and he teaches violin and viola at San Diego State University. And he just posted 2 videos of that workshop on his website for free. So again, look in the description here. I'll put a link in. It's really worth checking out. I want to add, for those of us with injuries, as opposed to those of us who maybe have just taken a break for a few months but never had an injury, it's really important that we warm up and stretch before we play. And actually, if you feel that in the time you've been away from the violin without an injury that you've lost range of motion, if it's less easy to get here, for example, maybe you should be stretching gently before you play as well, in addition to stretching afterwards. This position requires more internal rotation. That's what it's called when your arm swings in from the shoulder. We need more of that than what most people need ever in their lives. So it's important that we get that back, and it's important that we don't strain ourselves while we're getting that back. So the last thing for today's video, I want to demonstrate 2 warm-up stretches that I didn't demonstrate in episode 1. A lot of you will be familiar with the first one. It's the good old Statue of Liberty stretch. Remember, you hold your arm high and straight and up, and you try not to lift your shoulder towards your ear. You don't want it. You want it as down. Leave it down if you can. And you can start with 30 seconds. If that seems hard, start with 10 seconds. And then if it starts getting tight or painful, put it down, see how many seconds you've done. Relax for 10 seconds, gently shake out. Do it again for another 10 seconds. Or if you did 30 and you felt good, do another 30 seconds. Build up how many sets you can do, and then gradually build up. Gradually, we're talking over a period of several days, right? Gradually build up to holding for 2 minutes at a time, and you can do several sets of that. And this helps with 2 things. It helps you develop the strength to hold your left arm up in this awkward position, and it also helps place the violin from above. We see, especially with younger students, but we see with I think we've probably all done this when we're tired. You have to put the violin up, you put the violin up, and here you are, and your scroll is pointing downward, which makes it harder to reach higher positions. And when you put your bow on the string, because your scroll is leaning downwards, gravity is against you and your bow starts sliding towards the fingerboard. We want to place the violin from up. It's not going to stay up. It'll settle in a position where the scroll is just a wee bit higher than the chin rest, which is what you want. So, the second stretch is from my physical therapist, and I use this cane. It's a special physical therapy cane. It's not for walking, it's for stretching actually. And I'll put a description in the link. It's very inexpensive. Most of you won't need this actually. And before I even show you what to do, I want to caution you, do not push too hard. You want a little stretch. I know I keep saying this over and over. I want to make sure nobody gets hurt. You don't want pain. You don't even want a big stretch. You want a little stretch. So what we're going to do is, without the violin, we're going to go to violin position, this awkward, lovely position, and you're going to use your right hand under your elbow to increase the rotation of your shoulder inwards a little. And I use the cane for that because my right shoulder hurts a little when I do that. So I push with the cane in my hand and point my elbow in. And if it doesn't hurt, hold for 30 seconds. If it hurts, maybe you're pushing too much, back off a little, do 10 seconds. My physical therapist now has me do 5 reps of 30 seconds each, but I started with 1 rep of 30 seconds. And this stretch is easy to overdo, especially if you haven't played in a while. So be gentle. Okay, everybody got that? Good. And if you're wondering why I started doing this stretch when it was my right shoulder that had the surgery, it's because I hadn't held a violin in months because of this injury and surgery. And it's very frustrating holding a violin when you can't hold the bow. So I thought, why bother? Well, the problem is I lost some range of motion. And so then I had to do a little bit of work to recover it. And because of the current limitations with my right shoulder, instead of holding my elbow for 30 seconds, I'm using the physical therapy cane, and that's a lot easier on my shoulder. So I really appreciate that some of you have messaged me questions. I think that's terrific. Please keep the questions coming. Click on the subscribe button to get notified of my next video. You can also look for episodes 1 and 2, Violin Rehab episode 1, Violin Rehab episode 2 if you missed them. And if you enjoyed this, please click on the like button. That helps with YouTube algorithms so that my video doesn't get lost. And if you know anybody who might benefit from this information, please share this video with them. Great. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.